All right, hello and welcome to this guide on valuable uniques. This is a max roll guide, and this will be a sort of a companion to that, more of an auditory audio version of it, so that if you don't want to read it, you can just kind of hear me talk about it. I'll give you probably some more details about like how I use these things we don't really cover in the guide, but this guide is meant to help newer players understand like what are some of the more valuable uniques in the game. So if these things drop, you're like, yeah, I should definitely pick that up and take a look at it. This is far from comprehensive. There's a lot of really good uniques that are not in here that are maybe like niche or just kind of easy to find. This is going to be a little bit more targeted towards things that either A, are great for leveling, so like if you're trying to level faster, you know to have some of these in your inventory for your next character, or B, are really rare and valuable in the end game, so if they drop, you know you got lucky and should pick it up. All right, let's start with the leveling uniques. And we're going to start with my favorite, and what I would say arguably is the GOAT, the greatest of all time as far as leveling uniques go, and that's Arboreal Circuit. Arboreal Circuit is a ring. You can wear 2 of these, and they give you up to 18% move speed each. So doing math, 18 times 2 is 36, I think. Yeah, that sounds right. So 36% move speed from 2 rings at level 1. Like you can wear these as soon as you get to your stash. On top of that, they also have an illusory tree proc when you get hit that taunts enemies, so that your survivability is a lot higher. And if you happen to be playing minions, even better, because your minions are more survivable in early game. That's actually a pretty significant challenge. So these are used every time I level a new character. If I'm not playing like a solo character without a stash, I always put 2 of these on. I look for nice high roll ones. If you can get a 10-18, you're in luck. But definitely put some of these in your inventory for your leveling, and you will be glad you did. You'll significantly increase the speed of which you are leveling. Next up, we have Firestarter's Torch. This is a brand new 0.9 item that makes clear for like the first 20, 30, even 40 levels an absolute breeze, because anytime you hit an enemy, you have a chance to inflict Spreading Flames, which is a dot with a pretty high base damage that will immediately spread to enemies around it. And you will find that you are completely blowing up packs with this on. Doesn't even matter what your build is, as long as you hit, you can wear this and you can just do a crazy amount of clear. And the best part is, it seems like the multiplier in this is bugged and not working yet, so this is only going to get stronger over time once they fix that bug. But even without that being the case, this is still an insane upgrade to early game clear that has made it so much faster than it was before, just by popping one of these on. I use it on pretty much every build now that has a hit component, and I wear it until the damage falls off, and then I move on to something else, and this just makes the first 20-30 levels so much faster. Next up, we've got Taste of Blood. This has been in the game for quite a while. The benefit of this one for a hit build is that the bleed on this is higher than you can get on any crafted weapon by level 13. Oh, and by the way, the reason why these are so good is because ailments are so good early game. So Firestarter's Torch and Taste of Blood are really great because ailments hit a lot harder early game than hit do, because you need to scale a lot more in hit. And so we pretty much run ailment stuff when we're leveling most of the time, those of us who play the game for a long time. So these just give you a lot of damage early. Taste of Blood is better for bossing than Firestarter's is, but Firestarter's is better for clear. So you can even switch between these two if you want to. Use Firestarter's Torch when you're clearing, and then when you get to a boss, pop on a Taste of Blood and profit. All right, next up we have Avarice. Avarice is great if you are an elemental build, because it gives you a source of leech, which is really hard to get, especially by level 6. And it also increases the leech rate, so you get faster. So if you're an elemental build, this is an absolute want to wear, but it also has elemental resistance on it. It has 13, 26, 39% total resistance on it, which is crazy for a level 6 item. But the biggest benefit out of this is that you can get it guaranteed on every run just by doing a quest. So it's an item that anyone is guaranteed to have, even their first playthrough, as long as they choose the right person in the quest, which is Elder Ezra, not the Gambler. So if you choose Elder Ezra on the side quest, you will get this item very early in the game, and it will give you a bunch of elemental resistance. And if you happen to be an elemental build, even better, that's going to carry you into endgame. Bleeding Heart, if you are not a spellcaster, is an insanely good item. This is so good. The leech you get off of this, up to 9%. We've just talked about how in Avarice, getting leech is hard. Like getting sustain in general is hard early game. Well, Bleeding Heart gives 3 times the amount of sustain. So if you are running a if you're running a spell build, you're gonna kill yourself because you're gonna put a bunch of bleeds on yourself. You killed yourself with that? Yeah, you're gonna kill yourself if you wear this. If you're casting a lot of spells, if you cast a couple every once in a while, it's fine. But if you're running a non-spell build, this is unbelievably good, and it's got melee and throwing attack speed on it. So if you're a melee or throwing build, even better. But yeah, this is a tremendous item for anyone who's not a spellcaster. Next up is Viper Tail. This is kind of like the torch, not the torch, the Firestar's torch. Insofar as this gives you a dot on any hit build, it's just great to have. It's got melee attack speed on it too. It's got slow, which just makes it a little bit easier to survive. And if you happen to have dodge, even better. But the best part about this is that 70%, up to 70% chance to poison on hit, which we talked about ailments being strong early game. This is no different. It doesn't matter if you're mixing and matching ailments, you're running ignite, you're running poison, you're running bleed early game, you don't have enough scalars to matter. So Viper Tail on pretty much every hit build I run as well. This is just a great item to help your damage in general. All right, last up for the showcase leveling uniques, we've got Morning Frost, or excuse me, we've got Boots with high movement speed, which starts with Morning Frost. Morning Frost can drop at or be worn at level 8, so it's very early, and it can provide up to 29% movement speed. We talked about 36% movement speed on the rings. Add on 29 on top of that, and you've got 56, 65% movement speed from 3 items. That's insane for leveling. That's crazy. By level 8, you get that. And once you get a little bit higher, you can get even more movement speed from Stormtide, which gets 34%. And then a Terra's Path can get even more. Let's see, 28, 38, 40, 43, I think. 43%. So early in the game, you can go really fast, get yourself through the maps a lot quicker by getting a good pair of unique boots along with those 2 rings and just fly through everything. A Terra's Path is generally the best of the 3 options once you hit level 30 because it's got the big health on top of it. But if you're wearing any of these, you're in a really good state. And if you happen to be a lightning build early game, this is going to give you a cap shock easy. So you're going to do a lot more damage as well. All right. Let's also talk a bit about some additional stuff we've got in here. These aren't like the showcase unique, so to speak, because they're not maybe as universally valuable, or there's some other reason why you might not use these, but they're still really good, and if you see them, you should consider them. So the first one is Dreamthorn. If you're going for a hit-based melee build, this is the highest added melee damage you'll get at 15. It's not even close. I was actually playing Warpath here today and a few days ago, and I was using this until I got to Apathy's Maw. So I wore this from 15 to 55. Just great damage. Like, it really is. Like, it's hard to get rid of this for a long time. So if you're playing a hit build, especially if you're playing melee void, like, then you definitely want to wear this. But if you're not, you can wear this for a long time. It's gonna be really good. Grimoire of Necrotic Elixirs is a weird one. So this one is actually extremely powerful and can be warded at level 1 and can give you up to 40 necrotic damage to melee attacks and spells for 4 seconds on potion use, which is an absolute ton of added damage that's on top of any other added damage you have. And it doesn't really matter this necrotic because it's early game. Again, we don't have a lot of scalars anyway, so this is still going to be a ton of damage. The downside with this, and why it's not in the showcase, is because you have to use a potion every 4 seconds to keep it up, and that's just not particularly fun gameplay, and also it means it's not super reliable. But it also has less void, necrotic, and poison damage taken, which is incredible for the early game. So if you're willing to do that, if you're okay with using potions consistently to get damage reduction and big damage bursts, then you can't beat this. This is such a great item. I just personally don't use it because of I don't like managing potions in that way, but for anyone who is willing to, you definitely want to wear this. Next one up is Isidora's Tomb Binding. So this gives an insane amount of armor for level 19, because it gives you plus up to 300 armor baseline and 35% increased. That is more than you'll get anywhere else at this point in the game. And if you're not using Viper Tail or the Thornslinger, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, this is a great damage reduction option, and you should choose this instead of like a crafted item. It's just so much better for early game. Until you can get stack a bunch of health on your belt, this is just going to be so much more damage reduction than you get elsewhere. Next up is Lessons of the Metropolis. This is another pair of boots that we didn't put in the boot section because it's a lot less move speed, meaning you won't want to keep it for very long, but it's good move speed for level 1 until you get to level 8. And the dodge rating that you get off of this, like once you get hit, you won't get hit again very often, because you're going to have that 300 plus a 20% early game. That's like 50% dodge. So that's a huge damage reduction, survivability boost early game until you get a faster move speed boots. Pop these on, it's worth it. Prism wraps are a really great end game item that also can be good early game. It is not on the top list though, because it gives sustain on crit. It's hard to get a lot of crit early game, but it gives elemental damage. It gives some crit strike chance. It gives 30% less elemental damage taken, which is a huge damage reduction boost. And then it gives that leech on crit. This can go well with some of the other elemental stuff. And if you're able to crit relatively consistently, it will definitely give you a good source of sustain. So it's a good item to have, but it's not like top tier like some of the other ones are. Quicksilver Coil can give you haste on hit. It's a 30% move speed buff. Compare that to 18% on Arboreal Circuits. If you can play a build that procs this enough, like Warpath, it's actually better. It also gives melee attack speed, which is great. But for most builds, they're going to want to just wear 2 Arboreal Circuits. So this is like kind of a niche. Only builds that hit often, very often, will want to wear this. But if they do, it's worth it. I was actually running this on Warpath. The Falcon is a really nice movement speed buff if you don't need any other stats, effectively. It's got some dodge rating on it, but it's not a lot. But 15% movement speed, if you've hit an enemy in the last 5 seconds, is very easy to maintain 100% of the time, especially on fast hitting builds. But even ones that don't, as long as you like walk by, hit something, run, walk by, hit something, run, you can keep that up pretty much forever. So if you're trying to absolutely blast your way through the campaign, this is a nice item to have. Thornslinger is great for physical builds. It has some bleed on it. It has movement speed. It has physical skills. And if you're throwing attack speed, even better. If you're a throwing attack build, even better with a throwing attack speed. This is going to be great if you're playing a Fizz build. But if you're not, you should play Viper Tail instead, because the poison's higher than the bleed is. So it's 48% versus 70%. But if you're playing a Fizz build, this is such a good addition to it, especially with a +1 to physical skills. So you get an extra point in whatever physical skills you're using. That it definitely belongs on this list. Tome of the Elements goes really well with elemental builds as well. It's got Leech, it's got Chill, Shock, Ignite, which really don't underestimate the power of the Chill and the Ignite on this. Chill makes the campaign an absolute breeze. Like if you have 3 stacks of Chill on the enemy, you can just like walk away from things. They just, even telegraphed attacks take forever to go off. And then the Ignite is just additional damage, is great. And of course, the elemental damage leads to health is excellent. The only downside is you have to be using an elemental skill, so it only counts for fire, lightning, cold builds. But if you do, Ignite is going to be leech. Ignite's going to do damage, and then the chill's great. And shock allows you to stun enemies more, so even that's got some value. The last one's Torch of the Pontifex. This has a ton of Ignite chance on it, 170%. So if you want to do a lot of dot damage fairly early, level 20, this is a great source of that. It's a superior single target option to the Firestar's Torch, which will be better for clear, but Torch would be a great option for like bossing. Okay, let's move on to the next section. We're already 13 minutes in. This is taking a lot longer than I thought it was gonna. 13 minutes in, but let's go on to the high value end game unique. So these are items that don't drop very often or may drop very little at all. So if you see them, they also have a lot of value in the game. Like they're high value items that are going to be used in multiple builds, not just one. I don't think I have any that are just one build in here. So if you see these, get excited. You got something pretty cool, especially later on, like when Trade League comes out. If these things drop, they're going to have some value to them. Bastion of Honor is the first one. This thing used to be insane, and now it's only mostly insane. Bastion of Honor is an item that allows you to have a guaranteed block against anything within 4 meters. It used to be 6 meters, which made it even crazier. But even with this nerf, it's still best in slot for a lot of builds. This is a really good item. If you're wearing a shield, you're probably wearing this shield. Like that's probably your best in slot. There's a couple of exceptions, but this is such a good shield right now that very few builds are going to not wear it if they want to wear a shield. And this actually is so good that it causes a lot of builds that otherwise wouldn't be shield wearers because they can't scale it to wear a shield anyway, because they can get 100% block chance as long as they're close to the enemy. So great item, absolutely. If you see this drop, you've got something special. Ravenous Void is one of the rarest items in the game and offers a ton of defense on the glove section. If you find these, you got very lucky. There is a way to target farm them. It is through the Husk of Elder Gaspar, but even that caps out in the single digits as far as like percent chance to drop. So even target farming this is very difficult. If you get these, you got a truly very, very rare item that will offer you more defense at the glove spot than any other thing. The trade-off is that it offers no offense, and you have to use a cleanse with this, or else you're going to probably kill yourself. But if you're willing to wear a cleanse and you don't care about offense on your gloves, these are best in slot for pretty much any build. There's a few exceptions, like low life builds don't want this. Anything that's going to hit their endurance threshold aren't going to want this, but everything else is going to want this. Next up is Orion's Eye. This is also one of the rarest items in the game. It's technically second most rare now. There's one item that has become rarer that was added in 0.9, but this is now the second most rare item in the game. There's no way to directly target farm this like there is with Ravenous Void, and it shares the same random world drop chance as Ravenous Void, which makes it more rare. This item has a number of benefits, but the biggest one is that it converts your void damage to fire taken, your void damage taken to fire, and then causes you to take less fire damage, which opens up suffix slots where you'd otherwise need to put void resistance. Now you don't need to, and also your void and fire damage are lower, because since you've converted all over to fire and you take less fire damage, you also take less void damage. It also has a really high mana roll, which some builds want to stack mana. That makes this almost automatically best in slot for those builds. It's got a great implicit on it, and it does give some stun protection, which is somewhat valuable, but the other stats are better. Omnis is not an insanely rare item, but it is very rare. What makes this so special are the rolls on it. So this is farmed from Shade of Orbis at 200 plus corruption, and it is a low chance to drop. It doesn't drop very often. I think I've gotten one so far in 0.9. However, if this happens to roll really well on enough resistances, this can be best in slot for pretty much any build. So for example, if you somehow manage to get all 45% resistances on this, which you're never going to get, but if you did, that's taken care of more than half of your total resistances on a single item, plus there's the +1 to all skills on it. So if you got that, that's your best in slot for pretty much every build in the game. Like, I can't think of any build that wouldn't take it. The problem is every roll is independent, so you could get 45 on physical and get 1 on fire, and if you get like enough low rolls in this, it's not very good. But if you get enough high rolls, depending on how your build shakes out, this could easily be best in slot for your build, because it might take care of all of your weaknesses and also open up suffix slots. So if you can get a great one, this is insane, but getting a great one is not particularly easy. Okay, Herald of the Scurry. This is actually the only one on here that is a single build unique. Technically 2, because there's like bleed and there's crit squirrels, but they're both gonna be squirrel builds. This one is special though because A, it's a very popular build, it's a very powerful build, and this is a very rare item, and it has a big roll range. So you can see that these rolls go all over the place. 10 to 30% increased health, 1 to 3 summon wolf, 5 to 75% minion dodge rating, 5 to 75% bleed chance, 5 to 75% shred fizz chance. So getting a really high roll on one of these is hard to get. Like a consistently high roll on all of the stats you want. And on top of that, getting LP is insane on this, because you can add on increased health, but even better, you can add on level to summon wolves, which this is converting wolves into squirrels, so that counts for your squirrels. If you can get a +3 to summon wolf, along with a +3 to summon wolf to get a +6 to summon wolf, you've got an absurdly good item that very, very few people in the game would have. So if you see this drop, definitely check it out. You're going to probably want at least one, because a lot of people are going to want to try out squirrels at some point. But if you get the right rolls on this thing, you could have a very special item. Next up is Fractured Crown. This is the only item in the game that has to be crafted as a unique. So I'm not going to go over like the details of it. It's a fairly complex scenario that you have to create. It's not like really hard to do so, but you need to get things to line up well. And once you do, though, you'll create a fractured crown guaranteed, but you have to get the right rolls on this. And the special thing about the fractured crown is what it does. It causes you to take damage to your mana before your health. So instead of you're losing health, you're going to lose mana, and the ratio of damage dealt to mana before health is 5-1, which means for every 5 health you'd lose 1 mana. So it's like it's a massive damage reduction, absolutely massive, as long as you've got mana. And the crazy part about Fractured Crown is it's not the only source of damage dealt to mana before health. You can get it on a chest piece, you can get it on helmet, and you can get an LP on this. So you can add additional damage dealt to mana before health. And if you somehow manage to have a crazy scenario where you have a perfectly rolled tier 7 damage dealt to mana before health on your body armor, and then you get LP on Fractured Crown and a perfectly rolled Fractured Crown, 50% damage dealt to mana before health, and get a tier 7 perfectly rolled on it, you can get to 100% damage dealt to mana before health. It's possible. It's insanely unlikely, but it's possible to do that, which means as long as you have mana, you take no health damage. So this is an extremely powerful item. It's extremely chased to get like the best version of it. Next up, Aurora's Time Glass. This is another one of those items, like if you get this, it works on every build because it's effectively a get out of jail free card. As long as you don't die to a one shot and you can drop below 30% health, you'll be restored to full health and gain ward equal to health restored, and enemies are slowed, and you get haste, so you're not going to die. And it's got a 20-second cooldown, which is absurd, absolutely absurd for a get out of jail free card like this. To get like a free health effect or free life effectively from this and have a 20-second cooldown, it's absolutely busted. If you have to get LP on it, even better. Like, you just got a crazy good item. All right, next up, we have Red Ring of Atlaria. This is new to 0.9, and it is the rarest item in the game. Nothing is rarer than this. The biggest benefit of this is the 20% to all resistances. Remember, we talked about omnis and like if you get your rolls right and just how much resistance you can get off of that. Well, this has a much smaller roll range, 15 to 20%. So it's much more likely to get a 20%. If you get 2 rings at 20, you get 40% from that. You have this ring, you got super lucky. This is the rarest item in the game that's not like special LP or like double, triple, quadruple exalted. It's like, as far as like a base item, this is the rarest one you can get. It's also got increased health regen, increased mana regen, increased dodge rating. So if your build likes that, that's even better. It's got 4 to 5 all attributes, which is actually really nice. It's got increased movement speed up to 8%. And then it's also got this weird thing where it's like 10% less damage taken if you have at least 180 total attributes. You can stack that with 2 rings. That is kind of like a, we'll call it a bonus, because getting 180 total attributes is really hard to do. And generally, you wouldn't want to try to scale your attributes quite that high. But if you do, that's icing on the cake along with the all resistances. So yeah, this is a very, very good ring that can fill in resistances where you're lacking and make it a lot easier to put in other suffixes elsewhere. Next up and last up is, unfortunately, Wings of Argentus. Now, this item, last patch, was best in slot in a number of builds because it had 40% less damage taken while moving. So any builds that moved a lot would love this item. It was insane. However, they've nerfed it by half. So it's no longer as good for as many builds. It also has the hardest LP to acquire as far as like per drop of any item in the game. It's still best in slot for a few builds, at least one build. It's still best in slot for sure for Warpath builds that continuously spin. It can be very powerful on other builds, and it's not a super hard item to get, but is a super hard item to get LP on, which is what would make it really, really good. If you can get LP on this and add increased health, or if you're playing Warpath, get an Exalted plus Warpath, you've got a super special item, one that very, very few other players in the game will have, which is why it's on this list still, even though it's got the nerf hammer on it and it's not as strong as it was. It still can be a special item if you can get LP on it and get the right affix on. All right, that does it for this video. I hope that was informative to you and that you know a lot more about some of these uniques now and know what you're looking for. And if you see one of these drops, you know you can now get excited for it and make sure that you don't leave it on the ground. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great time in LE, and I'll see you all again real soon.